you make me wanna talk back to you. Say it like that. If I hate you, then find someone new. Baby, but you know I never will. No, so I choke you down just like a pill.
Oh, yeah. What's going on, everybody? Welcome to In My Opinion with me, your host, Pro, from the Pro Wrestling Podcast. Boy, oh boy. I was supposed to have a guest to come on today, Tony from All Things Wrestling, but a few things have come up, so he won't be able to join us tonight. I think he said in a couple of hours or something like that, but sounds like he needs to take care of a few things first. So, how's it going, everybody? So, man, what a time to be a wrestling fan. I gotta say, it's been quite interesting. You know what? In the I don't know, 2 or 3 years that I've done this, I've come across many different opinions from people, and it's just so hard. I can't seem to wrap my head around the fact fans are just so like fickle, and they change their mind about everything, and it doesn't really take much. Like a year ago, maybe right around the time All Out 2021 was coming around, everybody was, AEW is the greatest thing on earth. Nowadays, it's fuck AEW. Well, it's not, I mean, it's not fuck AEW, but it's more or less like, oh God, they don't know what they're doing. And I'm not going to sit here and say that AEW is the greatest thing ever, because no promotion's perfect. Please tell me one promotion where it was just perfection all across the board. Because the same year I was talking about AEW being so great, it was the same people saying WWE sucks. WWE's boring. I can't sit here and watch 3 hours of Raw. I think it's weird because the pendulum has definitely swung as far as fans. What's going on, Young Wolf? What's going on, Kenny? I just saw his live. I don't know if he's still live or not, but I didn't know opinions mattered. Yeah, they matter here, JMO. They matter here, right here, in my opinion. Impact Wrestling. What's going on? Hey, what's going on, everybody? Dang it. No, I'm off. Oh, you're off now. Yeah, just like, I just find it so weird nowadays. You know, I'm in this group chat where it seems, I don't know if it's frustration. I feel like it's frustration because a lot of people are just disappointed in how Tony's booking. And I sit there and like try to keep it positive. Like, God, I don't think what he's doing ain't that bad. I mean, I don't know what it's like to book a show or to have like thousands of people underneath me and having to make everybody happy. I'm sure that's fucking tough, Raw last night was awesome. And lately WWE has been doing nothing but good shit. And I'll sit here and admit that I am not a. My dog is going crazy. I am not a what's the word people use now? AEW sexual. But I want to stick up for them because I feel like they get a lot of hate nowadays. You want my opinion? Liquid Death is mid. Man, if you don't come off at core is mid. Core water has to be the most. It's like a bootleg Fiji. Core water is what you get when you drink the good water out of a bottle and then put tap water in it. I got goosebumps again when the video of Bray came on. Yeah, and that's the thing too. Like, I feel like a lot of people are saying Triple H was, kind of behind the whole Bray Wyatt return, which in a sense he was. But I think Bray Wyatt has a little bit of more of a creative influence than people like to admit, because he was doing great with The Fiend too. And that's when Vince McMahon was, controlling everything. I think he's just a fucking genius. I think he's the genius of it all. I don't know if it's necessarily Triple H. Triple H has definitely put in the budget for that. Whatever budget cuts they had or that they lost when they fired him in the first place, they definitely have it for that production because Extreme Rules was amazing. But I mean, holy shit. I think this is one of my gripes. It's just fans. I feel like we just need to calm down a little bit, take a step back, and kind of realize let's take a step back and go into Tony Khan's shoes or Triple H's shoes. How easy is it for us to play armchair quarterback? And be like, yeah, they should have done this, they should have done that. But we don't know what happens behind the scenes. I mean, besides Sammy Guevara and fucking Andrade. I mean, that shit came out. It's just like the Eddie Kingston shit and the CM Punk backstage dilemma. The more you say Liquid Death, the more I'm going to drink it. Bray has a great mind for the business and how to do creative work. He does, and it's proven again and again and again. He's more of a, what do you call it? Creatively, he has the same. He's on the same level as Jericho as far as progressing and using a new character for almost every year, every couple of years. My cat's got my remote. I don't want to get up, but at least sorry, I just read that. It is a great era to be in again for wrestling fans. We need to sit back and enjoy what's on the TV. And I agree. And I feel like people just going off that, I feel like people harp on there's no storylines in AEW to really catch your interest, I guess. And with that, I say, you guys wanted an alternative. You guys wished and hoped for an alternative for such a long time. We finally get it. It's not the formula that WWE has, but it's an alternative. We're not going to have the same storyline structures as them. Otherwise, everybody would just complain that they're copying WWE. But nonetheless, I think somebody is here and wants to say something about what I just said. So please welcome, guys, Chris from Dumb Marks Podcast.
What's going on, man?
Hey, what's going on? So
how you doing tonight?
You heard? Oh, I'm doing great. I'm doing great.
I caught that we have an alternative.
You caught
That's
that?
about all.
That's all you caught?
Yeah,
I just said we should be grateful that we have an alternative.
absolutely.
And what else I'm saying is like you can't always want the WWE structure of things.
What's going on, Kenny?
They seem to be doing a lot better than WCW did in its final years. Yeah, exactly. I mean, what's up, normal guy?
What's going on, man?
But I don't know. What's your take on it, on the fans and how they, within like a year and a half, just turn their opinions on AEW?
Listen, I'm all for it being an alternative. I'm still watching it. Doesn't mean I'm enjoying it necessarily at the moment either. But that's kind of what Jason brought in there about WCW. That was me at WCW towards the end too. It's just like you watch some of the good and you watch some of the bad. You know, just because WWE was good didn't mean you stopped watching WCW or ECW at that time. Right now, for whatever reason, to me, AEW just isn't clicking for me. I think there's a lot of things that go into that. It's not just one thing. What it comes down to, why doesn't it click? That I don't know why. And I don't know if it's necessarily behind the scenes the formula has changed. It seems that way. That's kind of what I'm leaning towards. That, there were people in charge before that were doing things, and now they're not the ones in charge, and someone else is, has the pencil and doing things. And that could be why I'm not enjoying it. I prefer the way the other people were doing it than the way the current person is.
Right.
But I'm still going to, and I'm still watching it, still trying to find some good in it. But I was thinking about this last night too. It's like for a few weeks there, even in WWE, everybody was talking about, Triple H is the savior and everything. Last night I'm watching Raw and I'm sitting there going, I was like, it feels like Vince produced the show. Like I did not enjoy Raw at all last night. There's very little I enjoyed. So it's just like, and that's been a couple weeks consistent now, even with Raw, that I haven't enjoyed it. But I don't know. It's wrestling has its ups and downs constantly. Yeah. So, just because it's not working now doesn't mean they're not going to turn it around.
Right. And to your point about AEW, and I mentioned this on Kenny's chat, is that I think a lot of injuries plagued potential long-term storytelling in AEW, like to the point where they always have to pivot all the time. Chris Statlander getting hurt, CM Punk getting hurt, Kenny Omega getting hurt. It definitely has plagued, and so they've had to pivot and so many interim champions back and forth that I think that's why everybody thinks it's like all over the place. I think it'll get back to where it is. There'll be structure again, but what is Jason saying? As far as WWE is concerned, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. Everyone is going to complain, but we are still going to watch to see what's going to happen.
And that's a very good point, because I've been thinking about this a lot lately, that there's so much pro wrestling out there. And if you don't like WWE or AEW, there's other companies to watch. You might take you a little bit to find them. They might not be, TNA, Impact, they're not on everybody's cable. So if you don't have access, you got to subscribe to Impact Plus. You got to subscribe to their YouTube channel and pay the money to watch it. MLW's on YouTube. NWA's on YouTube. Women of Wrestling's on syndication. There's tons of stuff out there, on top of indie promotions all around the country. So, if you don't like one, there's something.
Time? Do people have the time anymore with all this wrestling? you can only fit in so much, you know?
Yeah. It's especially for people like us that try to cover this weekly. You know, I don't have the
Yeah.
time to watch everything. Last week I watched Raw, I watched NXT, I watched Dynamite, I watched SmackDown, and I watched Rampage and Battle of the Belts, and then I watched Extreme Rules. It's a lot of wrestling in a week. I mean, it's a lot to cover. And this week I'm not doing that. It's like for the most part, I've pretty much axed Rampage off my list. SmackDown's been one of those ones where I haven't been enjoying SmackDown, so it's like I'm ready to knock that off as well. So it's like I watched Raw last night, I'll watch Dynamite tomorrow night, and that's probably gonna be all I watch this week because I don't have the time to do everything. Last week was a little different. I had COVID last week, so I had a little bit more time to do stuff. But
Jason says, if people don't agree, we can have a discussion and figure out what we enjoy and get perspective of all companies. Right. Oh, well, I would like to, I mean, I guess from what I'm getting from that is I would like to hear what a Impact, like a diehard Impact fan likes about the product.
Yeah.
Because you don't hear a lot of people talking about it. Unless
Steve
like
tries to cover Impact on our show every week. But Steve doesn't also subscribe to anything that I'm aware of. I think he just follows on social media, like watches the highlights and the clips and everything. So, I mean, he enjoys, like, I know he watched Bound for Glory the other night and he enjoyed it. And we'll probably talk about that more this Saturday. But it's just occasionally I'll go on Impact's YouTube and watch the clips, or on their Twitter and watch a clip. But I don't have the time to stay invested in Impact. And honestly, for the most part, Impact's one of those promotions that outside of the women's division, I don't really care about a lot of talent that's down there. Like a lot of their male talent, I'm not that invested in, other than like say a Josh Alexander. He's one of the few ones that are down there that I go, okay, I'd watch a Josh Alexander match. A lot of the other people down there, it's for me, there's a reason why they're there. You know, like, and not invested in their matches at all.
See, to me, I always describe, not a bash on anybody who watches it or works there. Well, it kind of is. But I always said AEW, Wendy's, WWE, McDonald's, Impact, Burger King, because Burger King is nasty. So,
but it also depends on your taste.
It also depends on your tastes.
Yeah.
But there's little bit of the population that likes Burger King or Impact.
Mm-hmm.
But majority of people go for Wendy's or McDonald's.
I really do wish that Impact had a better position for an audience. Because right now, yes, you can sit there and say, okay, their audience is the minimal of pro wrestling companies, you know, that get tracked. If they were in a position still on a Spike TV or something like that, I would like to see where they would be positioned at. Would people still be tracking them, or would they still be pretty much where they're at right now, even on just Access?
Right. And to that, I'm wondering, with all these, like even like, let's be honest, Rampage is really close to doing Impact numbers.
Yes.
So I'm curious to see what they're going to do with this Ring of Honor if they end up going on TV, where it's going to be at, what's the time slot, and what the numbers are going to look like for that. Because I don't want ROH underneath AEW to be the same as Impact or Rampage.
Yeah. We've talked about this on our show, that there's two options right now for Ring of Honor. You know, because Tony Khan just came out, I think it was last week, and said that Warner Brothers is still interested in Ring of Honor, but they're not ready to do a deal yet. And it's like, okay, like, when there was a point where Raw and SmackDown were both on USA Network, WWE wanted to keep both of them on there, but USA Network said, listen, we're going to give you X amount of money. We can either give that to you for both shows, or we can give it to you for one show. What WWE do? They took it for one show, and then they split off SmackDown. And that's whenever it went to Fox. To me, that's what Tony needs to do with Ring of Honor right now. You're at a point where you've had 2022 was a great year for Ring of Honor pay-per-views, but how do you follow up with that? It's like it's very inconsistent. You're building up to events, but you're just doing these random title matches on TV. There's no consistent storyline for anything right now. So it's either you already have AEW Dark and Dark Elevation on YouTube, so do you give Ring of Honor a YouTube show, or do you say, okay, open bidding, what network's going to want to pick up Ring of Honor, and kind of go from there?
That's a good point. You could get rid of one of the Darks.
You could
totally do it. I never saw the point. I never saw the difference between Elevation and Dark.
Mm-hmm. You're 100% right.
Yeah. So you could I totally agree with you that you could give them a YouTube show, so at least people can at least attempt, because I know it's hard to watch YouTube shows sometimes. Mm-hmm. For me, for some reason, I just can't. I'll watch it, but I can't get into it just knowing where it's from, because YouTube to me is like there's a plethora of content there.
Yeah.
That you could be scrolling, you could be watching AEW, but then another video pops up on your recommended, and you're like, oh, that's more interesting. And it's like that. So, but
MLW is a great example for me of a company that I really followed on YouTube. And then there for a little bit, they got away from YouTube, and pretty much once they stepped away from YouTube, I kind of lost interest in MLW. I've yet to kind of regain that again. And I know they're about to relaunch again next month. Mm-hmm. And, I'll see if I get back into it. I think they're starting off with Battle Riot or something like that. And I'll probably check that out. But when they were consistently on YouTube, I was pretty much, I might not watch it every week, but every couple of weeks I might catch up on the episodes because it's an hour. It was commercial free. I enjoyed it. NWA, on the other hand, when they first started on YouTube, I watched, here and there.
Yeah.
But then the same thing. They went away during the pandemic into that pay model, and I got away from it. I've yet to go back.
Yeah. So Jason was saying something. He said, is there a broadcast company that wants wrestling now other than the channel it's already on? See, I was thinking about ROH and the fact that they're with Warner right now. Mm-hmm. And how many channels Warner has. I think you could have, Dynamite on TBS, do your Rampage on TNT, and then find a time slot in between all those Impractical Joker reruns and put ROH in there.
Now, I don't know what Impractical Jokers brings in, but there's a reason why they're on so much on that network. So I'm sure the main thing that True TV would probably be looking at is Ring of Honor going to outdraw Impractical Jokers.
More than, yeah, I guess.
Yeah, so if they think that Ring of Honor could outdraw them, then I'm sure someone would give a chance to it. I think right now it's just proving that it can outdraw. And
so
while Dynamite, is consistent pretty much with ratings, Rampage is the complete opposite. So it's not like Tony can sit there and say, hey, here's our blueprint. This is what we're getting consistently every week on both of our programs. No, they're going to sit there and they're going to say, okay, this one, yeah, it's becoming a brand. This one over here, it needs work. So while you're still building that, we're probably saying we're not sure if we're going to give you this other one yet. We need you to establish everything else. And
where
I
would
think
you like it to go?
That's a good question. That's a really good question. Me personally, I think YouTube is where I'd put it right now. But does that undervalue the brand and the product?
I think so. Because look at the way people act with Dark.
Yeah, because if people aren't attracted to it on YouTube, no broadcast network's going to want to pick it up then or pay money for it. So that is a very difficult position to be in. But I think there's tons of companies out there that would be willing to pay a little bit of money for a show instead of them creating it. That's kind of the reason why Fox went with SmackDown. They didn't have to invest the money into creating the content or owning it. It's just, okay, every Friday we're paying you money, and we have 2 hours every Friday night now. And I think there are other companies that would like that. It's just, does wrestling fit on every channel? It could. It's entertainment, so it should fit on any TV channel. But does it work with that TV station's branding?
Right. That's the thing. I think maybe that's a dilemma. That's why they've been stalling for so long to actually put it on TV, because they don't know. It's like, yeah, I don't know. Dynamite and Rampage are reminding me so much of the WCW ratings, Nitro and Thunder. Is there a parallel to that? Was Nitro better than Thunder as far as ratings?
I think Nitro was always better than Thunder, but I'm sure that probably in the beginning they're probably comparable. I mean, it's been 20 years. I don't really remember all the ratings.
I don't
it's
know.
Like I followed the ratings that closely then either, but
back in the day, it didn't really matter.
No, I mean, you heard about the ratings because everybody was talking about ratings back then. Like that wasn't just pro wrestling; it was all the TV channels that you were, because everybody was into that shock stuff. So they were like, "Oh, this one's bringing in this many, this one's bringing in that many," and WWE was bringing in 5 million people each week or whatever, and
yeah,
it's like, of course they're going to tout that from the mountain.
It's crazy to think about at one point that Monday nights were killing football ratings.
Mm-hmm.
They were making 5 million. They were getting 5 million viewership almost every week. That's crazy.
Yep.
And I just wonder where it just died out, because we haven't got that since. A lot of people think that being a wrestling fan nowadays is great, or it's thriving. I would say the opposite, because we're still not where we used to be.
No, not even close to where we were. A couple years ago, before pre-AEW, everybody was talking about there's a wrestling boom coming. There's a wrestling boom coming. And we actually are there in a way, to a point, just because there is so much wrestling. But is it all good? And just because there's so much to be found, doesn't mean tons of people are tuning in for it either. But people are also consuming things differently these days too. Yeah. It's like everybody tuned in live for Raw and Nitro. Now maybe they're DVRing it and watching Monday Night Football instead, or doing something else, or maybe they're just watching it on YouTube the next day, just the clips. So
you make wrestling sound like wrestling podcasts.
There's a lot of them too.
There's so much of it.
Yeah. It's like as much wrestling content as there's that many voices trying to talk about it too.
Yeah. There's so many voices, man.
Yeah.
I swear. Jason elaborated and said Thunder was terrible ratings. WCW didn't know how to do multiple shows. They were losing money off of Thunder. And I think that's the difference.
For a while, WCW wasn't making much money, period.
And that's the difference. And I think Eric Bischoff was a very bad businessman in that aspect, because he was paying people money that he didn't have.
Yeah.
And that's why, the show eventually got stale, because they just didn't. I'm assuming they didn't pay enough people to write their shows, and the booking got terrible, and just shit like that, and that's why it tanked like the way it did. So I don't like the comparisons that people bring up when they say, "Oh, I see so many similarities from AEW now to WC." There's no way. It's not even close. I mean, to me, I don't know about to you, but to me, it definitely isn't.
The things that I would like to see, Tony Khan learned from WCW is to learn from their mistakes. Learn from the good, take the good too. And I think that's what he's tried to do. But learn from what WCW failed on. And I think that's actually something I think WWE can do, because I think there's a lot of times where WWE's fell into some WCW territory as well. And the biggest thing is don't overstock your roster. And that's for both big companies, WWE and AEW. Don't stock it to the point where you just have wasted talent. So what are you doing when your roster's overstocked? You're paying people money that you shouldn't be paying them. So it's like there's a way to save money. And I think right now Tony's okay with putting the money out there, but there's going to come a time where that's going to stop. He's going to get to a point where, whether it's the video game, if the video game doesn't take off, or if ratings start going down, there's going to get to a point where he's going to invest so much money, but they're not seeing the return on that investment. And things could change. And maybe it's not him doing it. It could be Papa Khan coming in and just being like, listen, you're hemorrhaging too much money here.
Right.
It's like, there's always that possibility. And that's where I hope that they learn from WCW's mistakes, is watch the spending.
But to that point, and Jason knows about this, the one in chat, and you don't have to be sorry for butting in so much. I love that you're the only one talking in the chat right now. And
keep the conversation going, man.
Yeah, you keep the conversation going. But he knows I was in a chat the other day with him, and I was mentioning that the Khan family, people fail to realize the Khan family themselves could buy out WWE if they wanted to. I'm not saying that they'll do it, but they got so much money, and not like a lot of money people fail to realize.
Yeah.
I think they're too big to fail, and that money's going to keep going. So
nobody's too big to fail, man.
Are you sure?
Something can always prevent that money from coming in.
WWE has gone through so many controversies, from the steroid scandal to multiple rape. Can I say rape?
Yeah.
Sexual assault allegations. You name it. CTE. Not their how they handled the CTE situation with Chris Benoit. But they've always bounced back. So that's what I mean when it's like it's too big to fail.
Yeah, I'm not saying that they couldn't bounce back from anything, but it's kind of funny, just off the year we had. Not what Vince was kind of the saying there. Not one man is bigger than WWE, and we found that out in 2022. That even though the guy that made it doesn't mean he's going to be there forever. And I think the same thing can be said with AEW. I think the money's going to be there, but they have what? They own a professional NFL team. They own a professional European football team.
Yeah.
I don't know where all their other money comes from.
I'll tell you right now, because I looked it up.
Okay.
His dad, Shad Khan, owns the monopoly in selling car parts.
Okay.
It's called Flex and Play or something like that. And as long as people have cars, that money's going to come in.
Okay, so here's an example. During COVID, a parts warehouse burned down in Japan. And that parts warehouse had like 90% of the world's parts.
Mm-hmm.
So say the Khan family has a parts warehouse somewhere. What if something happens in that parts warehouse? And their money just has to stop one day. Not saying it stops for good, but temporarily that money's got to stop. I guarantee the first thing they put the halt on is AEW. Because what's bringing them in? Because when you're looking, that NFL team, that's a status symbol right there. The European football team, that's another status symbol around the world. AEW, it's a little different. I think there's things that are expendable in their portfolio, and something tells me some AEW money could be expendable if something would happen to some of their funds.
I would think with like $8 billion in the bank account, you would have enough money saved up for when an emergency like that would happen. Always have a plan B.
Yeah. And I'm not saying it would be long term. I'm not saying they would shut down AEW.
Right.
But I think business would change. Business would have to be altered.
So what's the deal with Tony Khan not granting releases then?
Do you think that's an ego thing?
Yes, I'll say this, and because we all know I love AEW. I also love CM Punk, and for everything that I like about Tony, I also hate, because he is a very, very, very egotistical, arrogant guy. Just the way he talks in media scrums, and he thinks like his shit doesn't stink. And I don't know what that stems from. I'm not a psychologist. I don't know if it's because his parents have always told him he was the greatest thing to ever live.
Could be.
Here's $2 billion. Go ahead and play with your friends, or what. But he is very arrogant. He's more arrogant than I think than Vince McMahon, I think. And the only reason why I say that is because Vince McMahon and his dad came from humble beginnings.
True. I think Vince's ego escalated over time. You know, it's not like it was just one day he bought his father's company and he had this ego. Yeah. I think he had, you know, he always talked about those gigantic grapefruits that he had, you know, in the Attitude Era. Yeah. I think he always had to have those to an extent. You know, you don't do what you did in the 80s and not have them. But as time went on, I think, yes, I think a lot of it from what and the timeline could be off, but from what I remember, is kind of after he bought WCW. That everybody kind of started talking about this attitude backstage with Vince, that things had changed. Because I think he just thought that, hey, he bought his competition, and he knew that there wasn't anything in his way anymore. And it could now be his way, you know, and that's it. And you start hearing people like Pat Patterson crossing him and telling him things like, no, this doesn't work or that doesn't work. And he just, you know, would let people go. You know, if they didn't agree with him, it's just, okay, if you're not going to agree with me, then I can move on. Not that he would change stuff. And I think that's part of the ego. And I think that's kind of what I'm seeing with Tony. You know, if the rumors are to be true, that's what you hear. I think that's what we're hearing backstage, is that he wants it to be his way. And, you know, they just did this whole backstage shakeup with hiring a bunch of new people. And they have so much talent behind the scenes, you know, so many veterans and just talent that could produce a quality wrestling show that could be the best show on TV. And WWE has the same potential. It's just, you got to listen to the people and you got to figure out some formula. And it's just like, sometimes it shouldn't all just fall on one person. And I think that was the biggest mistake Vince made, was he let it all fall on him. And I think Tony's making the same thing right now.
You would think with everything that's been going on, and that he would at least try to like diminish his roster a little bit, just so he doesn't have, like, I was saying at the beginning of the show, I don't know what it's like. I've never ran a company. I've never booked a promotion. I don't know what he's going through, but if I were him, I would feel so overwhelmed, and you can't make everybody fucking happy.
No, you can't.
And I think that's what he's trying to do, but by doing that, by making everybody happy, you're making nobody happy.
Yeah.
You know, and that's evident.
Yeah.
It's just crazy. But yeah, very, very egotistical. And I wish he would, because you're like you said, now you're falling into that Vince McMahon trap, where people for years were saying that WWE hoarded talent away from other promotions, and now he's pretty much he's almost doing the same thing. I mean, we only talk about like 2 instances where he's done that, but like Andrade, I feel like you could get rid of Andrade and be perfectly fine.
Yeah, but I put that blame on Tony though. You know, you brought Andrade in and you made him just nothing.
But
You know, it's
like before that, he was nothing. He was a mid-carder with Selena Vega.
but did they give him a chance to shine? You know, that was supposed to be AEW's whole thing, that talent can come in and get their time. And I just never felt like Andrade got the time.
I mean,
He would have matches and they were quality matches.
right.
But if you don't have any of the character development to want to watch the match, what's the point?
They did fumble the ball a lot with him. It was just crazy how he went from showing up and then Chavo Guerrero shows up. He's like his assistant, and then they fire Chavo Guerrero out of nowhere, and then so now he's got to shuffle. And who else came out? Was it Vicky that was with him at one point?
She's the one that brought him out, I think.
She's the one that brought him out.
Yeah.
It was Vicky, and then it was Chavo, and then it was Jose.
He said,
And then he was
the Undertaker treatment of Brother Love, $1 Million Man, then Paul Bearer.
He's had so many managers, and then he was the owner of he bought the fucking stupid company of Matt Hardy, and
Yeah,
where did
that
that
was
go?
the stupidest
I've never
thing
seen. I
about
haven't
it.
seen Butcher, Blade, the Bunny, Private Party. Well, I don't know what's going on with that. And then Roosh comes in out of nowhere, and now he's tagging with Roosh. I'm like, who the fuck is this guy? And I'm just like, it's just all over the place with him.
It is.
And is it Tony? Because I thought for sure the wrestlers had a little bit of creative control. He doesn't
And
have full
that's
control. I don't
Tony
think.
is control, is creative, head of creative.
Okay.
It's copy and paste Vince McMahon right now, because Tony calls him, like, Vince was president, CEO, head of creative. Tony does the same thing, GM, CEO, and head of creative. I just don't know what his team is underneath that. If he does have a team, before the people that were having the pencil were the 4 EVPs. They were supposed to be the ones running creative with the talent. They were letting the talent supposed to have, more reign. But I think you've seen since that whole shakeup last year, where there was that tension behind the scenes that was rumored, and Tony kind of took over all of creative. The product has changed since then. And that's, for me, it hasn't been as good as what it was. Again, doesn't mean it can't get there, but I think you've had enough time to, like we talked about, injuries and everything. There's enough time that has passed with some of these injuries that you should be refocused again, and you should be on the path by now. And it just doesn't seem like it's getting there. The big problem for me is how they've used Moxley the past few months. When they just gave Moxley the interim championship, was I happy about it? Absolutely not. But I could understand it to an extent. It's like, okay, we have to have a champion. He's their guy. He's Tony's boy.
Big name.
Okay, you put the belt on him. But then you give him the title after the interim championship. He loses CM Punk wins the title, and then you do another tournament, and then you give him the title again. And to me, it's just like, why? This right here was your chance to put it on somebody new, maybe somebody younger or somebody different. Just to do something different now. You have that opportunity here, and they didn't do it, and that's been a thing that's bothered me for a few months. So a few months right there, the whole title situation has been an issue for me in AEW. But when we were talking about on our show, we were talking about all out predictions and who we thought were going to be the new champion and everything after that. Jason brought up a good point on our show, Jason, that, okay, MJF won, the number one contendership. And do you have him face somebody like a Daniel Bryan or Bryan Danielson, who would just hold the title temporarily, or do you have MJF beat your guy? And I was like, okay, I can justify that. MJF and Moxley are going to fight, and if Moxley's viewed as the AEW guy, and MJF beating him, that's a big win for MJF. And then we're on to somebody new and different. So at this point, I'm just waiting for MJF to win the title.
Ready to put the chip in?
Yeah. So I mean, if that happened, I'm hoping it happens that full year. But I'm hoping that is kind of the restart for AEW. That they're booking towards this, but that's not the only problem that I see. I have a big problem with how much they're using Jericho the past few months as well. He's been overly used, way too much. He's like Triple H in 2002.
Yeah,
where he's like in multiple segments of the show, and there's no excuse for that. And especially as he is part of the company, he should know better than putting himself over. There's too much talent there to not establish more talent than just putting him over.
What I think they're doing, and actually, one second, because I want to make sure he's still here with us. He says if TK grants releases, he now knows with Triple H having the pull, he can get people back. Yeah, maybe.
Yeah.
Triple H treats people a lot better than Vince. That's a fact. AE roster is overcrowded. Yeah, that's a fact. The one thing I will say about the Triple H thing, it wasn't always like
detected on
that.
any of those.
Huh? No flaws.
I said no lies were detected on any of those.
I said he's always a good guy, but he's definitely humbled himself, and he knows what people like and watch or want to watch. To counterpoint what you said about Moxley and Jericho, yes, you could definitely put the belt on a newer, younger talent. That's basically what AEW's, that's their bread and butter, is people that nobody's ever heard of. People use younger as a term, even though they've been in the game.
Maybe.
Yeah. But people also, like a casual wrestling fan, will recognize the name Chris Jericho before they'll recognize a name like Daniel Garcia.
You're absolutely correct.
So
doesn't mean Jericho needs to be in 3 segments of the show, though.
Okay. That's a fair point. That's a fair point. He doesn't. Yeah, he does kind of hijack it.
During that whole Kingston feud, it was like there'd be weeks that they were opening, there'd be a middle segment, and there'd be them doing an ambush at the end of the show. It's like, why? And then they do it on Rampage too. It was too much. And we talked about that with Ring of Honor. Okay, so go back to, what was it, Death Before Dishonor was the last pay-per-view. And we talked about, it was Jonathan Gresham versus Claudio for the title. And everybody was just like, no, you put the belt on Claudio because he's the established name. Because no one's going to know who Jonathan Gresham is to build Ring of Honor. And then you had this Ring of Honor match, with Jericho versus Claudio. And everybody said the same exact thing about Jericho. It's just like, whoa, like, it can't be the same for both of them, though. Like I get if they were having TV ready, like if they were about to sit there and say, like, okay, November 1st, Ring of Honor TV is going to launch. Okay, maybe I get it. You put the belt on Jericho to start, and then maybe you have Claudio win it back or something, on the show.
Yeah.
Just to, like you said, Jericho has the more name notoriety. But if it seems like they're going to try to gear Ring of Honor to be a younger person show, you don't need Jericho as the champion. You establish a champion on that show, because that's just what it is. That's the talent that you're going to get. Yeah,
no, you're right. My brain actually does these. I don't know if you do go through the same thing, but these flip flop takes where
Yes.
I'll say one thing, but then I'll see the perspective from another person or think about it further and be like, oh, maybe, that's a good point. Because, like, yes, you want to have the belt on a notable name.
Mhm.
I get that. But at the same time, you want to build up your new stars. And how
Yeah.
are you going to do that when somebody's basically holding the belt hostage? Like we're running into the same problem where Brock Lesnar was champ for like 4 years in a fucking row and didn't defend it at all. And all these guys that came from the indies to the WWE or been there for like 15 years and never got a title shot were just swept under the rug because we had to have fucking Brock Lesnar versus Roman Reigns for the 200th time.
Yeah.
I don't know.
And that, in a way, that's a big part of my argument right now for the state of the championship as well. But
So let me ask you this, and this is a question I actually had for my guest Tony from All Things Wrestling that I'll use when he gets back on the show. Hopefully he's not watching, but one of the questions is, should wrestling have an off season?
that's a very good question. That's been a topic of discussion for decades, I think. Should it? No, I don't think it should.
Really?
Because I'm also one of these people that doesn't believe that every person needs to be on the show every week, especially with an AEW and a WWE. Yeah, sure, there's going to be promotions that have limited talent, so that there's a reason why everybody's on each week. WWE, I think you could probably produce 2 to 3 weeks of TV, and same with AEW, with not having anybody repeat. And if you do that, and you do it intelligently to the point of booking it properly, of saying, okay, like you plan out, if you have enough talent, say 3 weeks, then you're saving money because then you can sit there and say, okay, these people are in for this week's taping, these people are in for next week's taping, whatever. So you could save money by not bringing everybody in. Like every week doesn't need to be all hands on deck. I get accidents happen, so it's good to have some handful of talent just in case. But yeah, I think you could have people with time off to heal properly every couple of weeks if you don't utilize them on TV all the time. WWE is a little bit different because they're the ones that do tour regularly, and have so many house shows where AEW doesn't.
Yeah.
So yeah, I can get the justification for it, having an off season or like a legit season premiere, season finale, kind of like Lucha Underground used to do. I can get the justification for that, but I don't think it's needed. What do you think?
I think it's a cool concept to have if you ever wanted to do it. NFL does it. I mean, we're talking real sport. I'm not not bashing anybody who does this does it for a living. I appreciate everything you do to your bodies for the sake of our entertainment. But real sports do it all the time. Football, basketball. I think both these companies have enough money to at least have a 2-month hiatus and then come back fresh. You could give that restart button or that reset button that everybody wants, and within those 2 months come back with a stronger product.
You could.
Just like with Tony Khan. He could probably use a fucking 2-month break.
Yeah.
Get everything together, come back. I think you could have something. Yeah, I think you could have a whole year planned out in 2 months. If you wanted to. If injuries don't come in effect. So yeah, I'm on the side of yes, I would like to see an off season for wrestling, but we're not living in that world at the moment, and it looks like it's nonstop.
It would make for something interesting. I think if there would be an end point, like if WrestleMania, if that ended it, if the first week of April every year, that was it, for WWE for 2 months. Maybe they didn't start back till June 1st. It would be interesting. I think it would make WrestleMania feel a little more special.
Mm-hmm.
And whatever else you would do, like whatever AEW would do, whatever show they would end on, I think it would make it feel a little bit more special every year. But at the same token, as soon as you do WrestleMania, what does everybody look forward to? The Raw after WrestleMania.
Right.
So in a way, you kind of lose that, so you got to wait 2 months for that build up. Because wrestling fans were always looking for that payoff. You do the pay-per-view and then you tune in the next night to see what happens.
I just also think with the talent too, you could give them a rest.
I think every talent would love an 8-week rest.
Mm-hmm.
Like how many injuries would heal on that?
Yeah, exactly.
And maybe it would be treated more like a sport if they did it.
That's another thing too. I mean, you don't have a Monday after the Super Bowl.
Mm-hmm.
That wouldn't make any sense. I know people look forward to it, but we gotta take away our selfish needs if we wanted that to happen.
Yeah.
And have WrestleMania end and then say, man, I can't wait for next season.
Mm-hmm.
And then maybe have if you want to treat it like an actual sport, have a preseason. Have guys like the NBA that are just coming up, like rookies, like a G League. Have these, I don't want to say no names, but have these people that nobody's ever heard of come up and wrestle a match on AEW until your main stars come out for the season premiere.
That's one thing that I really enjoy about New Japan Pro Wrestling. Their contracts are a little bit different. Sometimes they do a multiple year contract. Sometimes they're year to year. But generally they all run through Wrestle Kingdom. So once Wrestle Kingdom's up, that's when you see a lot of people come and go. Some new people return, or that's your farewell for the other talent. And I like that because that's kind of that time of, okay, here's your fresh restart for the year for New Japan. And then these are the people they're going to build for the next year.
So yeah, man, we covered a lot.
We did.
I feel like we said, we covered a lot. I mean, that's pretty much it. I mean, do you have anything else you want to talk about?
Yeah, I appreciate you having me on.
No, yeah.
Thank you so
for
much.
Sure, man. I appreciate you coming on last minute. Like I said, Tony, had to take care of some things. So.
Oh, not a problem. Anytime.
Appreciate you, man. You came in clutch with that. Everybody in the chat, thank you for joining. Jason, thank you for being so engaging. You brought on some good points and good questions, and I appreciate all of you. I will be back on tomorrow during Dynamite for the watch party. Hopefully Ramble Mania or Hazel will be on, and Kenny from the Call Up will be there with me. Chris, I love to see you in the chat, of course. I
think tomorrow night I'll be watching Dynamite, so
all right, cool.
Gotta get ready for our show on Saturday morning. So tune to the Dumbmarks podcast every Saturday morning at 11 a.m. Eastern. Check us out at Dumbmarks Pod. It's right down below there.
I was about to ask you if you wanted to plug some stuff, and you did it. That's a pro right there, guys. All right. Well, from me, from the Pro Wrestling Podcast, to Chris from the Dumbmarks Podcast, we are out of here. Have a good night. Enjoy